Hey, it's Joshua Gar from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? Coming to you from the Seattle Space Needle, and every photo and video that you're seeing in this camera shootout was taken on the cameras of the Samsung Galaxy S6 and the S6 Edge. So it's important to note right off the bat that the cameras on both Samsung flagship devices are identically the same, so you're going to see a mixture of photos and videos from the Galaxy S6 and the S6 Edge because they both perform exactly the same. You'll notice that these photos right now that you're seeing are from my Galaxy S6 review from the Korean Friendship Bell, and I'm showing you these photos again so that you can get a taste of what coloration you get from these photos. Now, I did have HDR on auto in these particular photos, especially since it was an overcast day, but even then, having HDR auto on means that you can take out the guesswork from needing to turn on HDR or not, and it will tell you in a little indicator in the viewfinder if you do have HDR on or off. Now, another thing that is worth mentioning is in this particular video, you're going to see a lot of photos that were taken while I was taking videos in the 1080p resolution with the video mode. You are able to take photos while you're doing video, which is a great feature, I think, but the photos will come out at 1080 resolution rather than the much higher one in this 16 megapixel camera. Now we move forward to Seattle, where there's still a lot of great coloration. This is a wonderful camera to have out in the daylight, and even in low light situations, it does perform pretty well, but I will show you some situations where it did not. That being said, f1.9 aperture for the front and rear cameras means that you are going to get some pretty good shots in most situations, even indoors, but in these outdoor shots, you're really going to see that I had quite a bit of fun using this as my daily driver camera. I didn't even need to bring out my actual DSLR camera in order to have some fun taking pictures of the sights in Seattle, San Francisco, and earlier, as you saw, the Korean Friendship Bell. Now, the videos that you're seeing will primarily be in 1080p resolution. The reason being, I wanted to make sure I use all of the features of the Samsung camera, like HDR during videos, and when you're using the 4K resolution video recording, you are unable to use those particular features. But it is still a nice camera to use for video. I have some really nice videos from here from both sides, but one thing that I will show you here is the warping on the sides when I'm walking through the campus of University of Washington. The video warping does occur from time to time, even if you have video stabilization on or off. It's not really that big of a deal, but something I knew that you guys would want to see. And then, of course, you have slow motion video, which is available here. You can take a capture of a regular video in the slow motion mode and then be able to fine tune the level of the slow motion. As you can see here, I have the original at 120, and then I brought it down to the slower one on the right. Here are some examples of the front-facing camera. I have this picture with Darcy Lacouve, and with the f1.9, you still have a little bit of that nice depth of field in the background, but still, it is a great camera to use for getting selfies in particular moments. And speaking of the f1.9 aperture, especially in the rear camera, you'll be able to get a nice depth of field look in your photos, very akin to a DSLR shooter with a nice lens, and you are able to pinpoint the portion of the viewfinder that you want to have in focus. But of course, if you go into the Pro mode, you'll be able to achieve the same effect by using the manual focus slider, which was also a very nice touch.
The theme of which that year was the age of space. That's how we got our name, the Space Needle. We're looking out to the west on this lovely and very authentic Seattle rainy day we're now having towards Elliott Bay, part of the
Panorama is using either of these cameras really does a great job, and even though you should be moving just the phone itself rather than your entire body, which would lead to a lot of the stitching problems that you might see, especially in this particular photo, if the subjects are moving about a lot, you will still see those stitches, and that's not really that big of a deal, something that we expect from panoramic cameras, but still, if you have a still image kind of like this landscape, or this from the Space Needle in Seattle, you're going to get a great panorama photo, and it all looks pretty great. The same goes for the front facing camera. In all but the lowest light situations, you'll be able to see that the wide selfie is able to get you a nice look at your group if you're going to take a group portrait, but it is a little bit fidgety, so you might need to take a few tries in order to get the stitching at the minimum. Now, as I mentioned before, I did want to show the benefit of using the Pro mode. Now we have these cherry blossoms that I had to bump up the exposure on, but one thing I did want to mention is when you're using the Pro mode in the Samsung Galaxy S6, you have to make sure that you have your metering on spot metering, because if you have it on matrix or on a weighted scale, it's not going to really bump up the exposure when you bring that slider up. You have to pinpoint that one spot of the subject that you want to be brighter, and then it's from there that you can mess with the exposure slider. And now in the low light situations, you'll see in these two particular photos that despite being indoors, there was still quite a bit of decent lighting, so the camera was still able to pull out a pretty nice photo. Now when you get outside, as long as you have a prominent light source within your scene, you will still get a nice photo, like this one of Pawnee City Hall, and also an example from the Griffith Observatory with the sunset on the side there. So if you're taking things like landscapes and whatnot with a prominent light source within the scene, you will still get a pretty nice photo. And at f1.9 aperture, you are able to still get some nice, decent indoor, let's say at parties and dinners shots. But unfortunately, just like with DSLRs, it will still have a law of diminishing returns, especially with the front-facing camera, which shows more noise than the rear one, especially because of its lower resolution. And with the lower shutter speed, in order to compensate for the low light situation, you will get motion blur in photos like you can see here. But really, those are all issues that are very common no matter what kind of camera you're using. The noise and the grain will rise up when the light comes down, and the same goes for the front-facing camera. As I said already, you can see here that there's a lot of grain and noise in this particular selfie indoors, and then this one was enhanced using the auto enhance within the gallery, and you can really see that when it tries to enhance the photo, the noise and the grain only gets more exacerbated. And as long as we continue showing how well these cameras perform in typical situations, why not end this video with a bunch of foodie pictures? Yes, the Samsung Galaxy S6 and S6 Edge cameras are even better than the ones that came before it in the S5 and the S4, but it might also be one of the best cameras available in Android right now. As I have said in plenty of situations in the past, it is the post-processing that really makes or breaks a photo from a camera on an Android device. And as a couple of my colleagues in the industry have said already, when you're using the S6 and the S6 Edge camera, you can't really tell that this is an actual Android phone because these pictures are not ones that you would expect to get from other players in the game. Now, that being said, I can't endorse enough how well this camera really makes this phone very appealing. And even then, one of the best things that I could say, as I said at the beginning of this video, is that without my DSLR camera, having the S6 and S6 Edge in my pocket really made me feel comfortable knowing that I was going to get some great photos and videos no matter where I was without my real lens camera. So as always, thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this camera shootout of the Samsung Galaxy S6 and the S6 Edge because both of the camera setups are the same. I went ahead and did a more long-form version of a camera shootout here because I really wanted to show how well these cameras performed, and it was kind of a revelation for me to know that when I was out in Seattle, I didn't need to have my DSLR camera with me because the S6 and the S6 Edge were going to perform just as well as I needed them to capture my memories. I will do the same of this type of video for the HTC One M9 and for future flagships, but until then, you can see the reviews of the Samsung Galaxy S6 and the S6 Edge by Lon over on the side there, and make sure you check them out. Head on over to our channel and drop us some likes on our videos, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Listen to our Friday Debate podcast, and then when you're done with all of that, head on over to AndroidAuthority.com because we are your source for all things Android.